Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very informative show coming right up. Our first guest is Matthew Pollard, and he's here today to talk to us about his new book, The Introverts Edge. Now, Matthew is an internationally recognized consultant, speaker, blogger, author, mentor, coach, and serial entrepreneur with 5 multi-million-dollar business successes, all before the age of 30. So let's welcome to the show, Matthew.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
So joyed to be talking with you, and we need this book more than ever. I mean, I can remember being a sales manager, and, we were actually instructed early on to, stay away from people who are introverts because they wouldn't be good salespeople, and that's so far from the truth.
It totally is, and, what's funny is that these days, with the right, I'm well known for saying that with the right strategies and the right systems, an introverted salesperson will beat out an extroverted salesperson hands down. And, the great thing is that if you're a sales manager especially that understands that, the introverts, if you train them correctly, become the most loyal salespeople you'll ever have because they have learned your system. And therefore, unlike an extrovert, will just go where the biggest commission check pays them. An introvert, a lot of times, will stay for the company that gave them what they never had before.
That is so true. That is so true because it can be, in sales, can be somewhat of a transient line of work. So hiring somebody that will stay is such an important deal.
Well, I think they say that it takes about 7 months to get a salesperson to become a highly effective member of the team. Now, to put that in perspective, when you look at how much a salesperson costs, 7 months is hugely expensive. Now, there are 2 major factors there. One is you want to keep them working with you long term so you don't have to continually train new staff. But on top of that, you also really want to make sure that you get them to be effective much, much quicker. And, I've worked with sales teams, both introverted and extroverted, actually, that usually, especially in commercial real estate, is a great example. Generally, it can take up to 12 months to get somebody to understand the industry well enough to be able to be successful in sales. And I was brought in by a really introverted guy who asked me to speak to his bosses, and he got me 8 minutes. I turned it into an hour-and-a-half meeting. I ended up working with the team, and so therefore I ended up training this really introverted guy and 2 extroverted guys. And this guy was proud to call himself the Bulldog, fist on the table, yelling at the phone. And at the end of the training though, it took us 2 months to get them from a $3 million business to a $4 million business. And less than 8 months away after that, they were a $10 million company. And the real driver behind that is the fact that by learning how to sell in an introverted way, by learning the steps of the sale, and by utilizing story in the sales process, you actually circumvent how long it takes you generally to get onboarded because the story sell experience that you haven't quite acquired yet. And one of my proudest moments was I got a phone call from Thomas, who was the introverted guy, who actually beat out the 2 extroverted bulldogs for the award they give out once a quarter for the best salesperson. So, I love hearing these stories of these introverts that really, just like me when I first started, had no right or no business being in sales, beat the extroverted people hands down. I love that.
I bet. Well, and why don't you share that with us a little bit? How did you even get into this not only, being the rapid growth guru, but into this line of work?
Sure. Well, I think the story of how I became the rapid growth guy is a little bit different. But, going back to my humble beginnings was, I was an introverted kid with a reading speed of a 6th grader in late high school. And, I had horrible acne and I had braces. So I really wasn't the most confident guy. I was kind of, uncomfortable in my own space, let alone talking to people that I didn't know. And because of my reading speed issues, while I got in the top 20% of my state for my end of high school scores, the problem that I had is that I was just exhausted. And I told my father completely saw this in me, that unless I knew exactly what I wanted to do at university, there was no way I should go. I wouldn't have survived it. I would have bailed out a year or 2 in. So we all agreed that I should take a year off to find myself. So I took a job at a real estate agency, and before you think I was the bulldog salesperson out front, I was the guy in the back office with this look on my face saying, don't talk to me. I'm here to enter data, and I'm here to find myself for the year. And my boss actually came up to me about 2 weeks before Christmas. I'd only worked there for a few weeks. He said, Matt, I've got some bad news. The company's gone broke, and you're out of a job. And I remember sitting there going, I've worked here for a few weeks. How can I possibly have lost my job already? But Australia is kind of different to America. So America, everyone goes on holidays late because you've got Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and then you come back straight after Christmas and you work for New Year's. Well, Australians have their summer break and their Christmas break all at the same time. So they disappear on the 20th of December, and there's not a decision maker to be found until about the 15th and 20th of January. There's no jobs you can get, except, of course, commission-only sales jobs, because they don't care if you make money or not. Any sale's a good sale for them because they wouldn't have made it otherwise. So I took this commission-only sales job that terrified me. And I remember having 5 days of product training and getting thrown on this road, and they said, go sell. And I was about to walk into the first door, and then I realized no one actually taught me the sales bit. I knew the call rates. I was taught the product, but no one taught me how to sell. Mm-hmm. Now, it took me 93 doors to get to my first sale. That's 93 doors of rejection, 93 doors to getting told to get a real job, 93 doors of getting sworn at a lot of the time. People can be lovely to people that are trying to do direct sales, especially around Christmas time when it's busy and people are stressed. But I remember walking out of my 93rd door and I made $70. I was ecstatic for about 45 seconds until I made the realization, I'm going to do this again tomorrow and every other day for the rest of the year. I mean, it wasn't okay, but I couldn't exactly tell my father I was going to bail out. I mean, he'd supported us. He'd broken his back working 80 hours a week to support us, and I'd promised him that I was going to support myself this year. I wasn't about to turn around on day one and say, sorry, it's too hard. So I went looking for an option, but I had a reading speed of a sixth grader. I couldn't exactly pick up a Brian Tracy or a Zig Ziglar book. So what I did is I discovered YouTube. And funnily enough, for a lot of people that are listening, there is so much on YouTube. There's a lot more than just cat videos. So what I decided to do is I started to learn the system of the sale. And every day I would go out and I would trial a new step in the sale. I'd perfect that. And then I would go home and I'd spend another 8 hours working on the next element of the sale and perfecting the parts that I've worked on. And for 6 weeks, I continued down that process. And every day I got mildly better and mildly better and mildly better, but I just kept going at it. On the 6th week, my boss calls me in, my manager at the time, and says, Matt, I got some news for you. No one's really been keeping track of the sales that you've been doing, but we just got the official report, and you're currently listed as the #1 salesperson, which just so happened to be the largest sales and marketing company in the Southern Hemisphere.
Oh, wow. So how did you feel when you heard that news?
Well, what's funny? It was during that time, I started to get the feeling that I was doing well. But what was weird was that, the extroverted people would all hang out in their group and they would talk about the fact that the market is getting more saturated, it's tough to sell at Christmas time. And I kind of wasn't one of the boys, and it was very much a boys club at that company. But, I kind of just kept to myself because I wasn't the kind of person that could just laugh and joke. An office full of salespeople really is an office full of extroverted people. So they're all having a great time. They're all having a laugh. They're all having a joke. And that just wasn't my personality type. So I would show up in the morning. I would hand in my sales. I would, find out where I was cold calling that day. And then I would just go and do my thing. And eventually, that people would start to see how much paperwork I was bringing in. And some people would notice. And they would start to say hello to me. But that was about it. And then when I won the National Salesperson of the Month award, all of a sudden people started to pay attention. But when I showed them what I was doing, they're like, no, that's too hard. An extrovert sells on their ability, on their personality. So if they're having a good day, i.e. they just made a sale, they've just had a great weekend or whatever, their sales are going to go through the roof. But if they have a fight with their wife, their husband, their son, their daughter, their friend or whatever, their sales plummet. They have a bad sales day, leads to another bad sales day. So it's highly linked to their mood. So what I found is regardless of no matter where I was within my sales, wherever my mood was at, I just followed a step-by-step process, a system. And this is why introverts gravitated to it, because my sales ability, regardless of whether I was in a good mood or a bad mood, didn't really change much. I just ran the program. Now, when I tried to show this to extroverts, a lot of them went, no, this is too hard, I'm not doing that, and went back to their doing what they did. So I got made a team leader, And all the introverts that came to work for the company ended up being under me. And I then trained them my Introverts method. They gravitated to it. Now we've got a whole team of introverts outselling the extroverted people. So then all of a sudden the extroverted started to pay attention and they started to learn the system. So what's funny is that these methods, I guess every book that we pick up that's around sales, and my good friend Brian Smith, the founder of UGBoost, that $1 billion Australian brand, he's endorsed the book, and, he said to me, he goes, Matt, I tell you, I'll endorse it if I like it, but I've never read more than a chapter of a sales book without feeling icky and throwing the book away. He read the entire book in 3 sittings, and he said the major differences were that usually he starts reading it, and it's full of bulldog sales techniques, and it's full of hard closing strategies, and that's just not him. The thing that's about this process, and I guess that's why it's been endorsed by Harvard, by Princeton, by, Malcolm Gladwell, by Neil Patel, is because it's a natural step-by-step process that just progresses and leads to a sale with no hard closing, no tough strategies. And the major element is that it's about making sure that you follow a step-by-step process. Now, Derrick Lewis, the person that Ghost wrote the book for me, is actually a chapter in the book. He's one of the last chapters, and he actually comes out from behind the curtain, and he talks about his own experience and how he struggled to make $27,000 a year in 2013. When he reached out to me in October of 2014, he'd made $12,000 for the entire year. Within 2 weeks of working with me, he'd made $40,000. Within 6 weeks, he'd made $80,000. By the end of the year, $120,000, and by the end of the following year, just shy of $300,000. And in his own words, he doesn't do everything exactly as I tell him to do it, but he follows the exact steps that I outline and the exact key strategies. And even when he wasn't doing it perfect, he still got those results. And working together to write this book, he's now perfected that process, and he now is doing it absolutely spot on. But just following the process and following the steps, because most people do it out of order, and most people don't do all of the steps. And then they wonder when they get to the end why they've got to do a hard close, or the customer doesn't say yes. It's because they didn't follow the process.
Yeah. Well, and, I think there's just a change in the paradigm of sales in itself where people really don't want to be doing the hard close. No one likes to feel that way, and no one wants to be have someone approach them that way. And so it's so nice to have another approach that feels more authentic.
Well, the funny thing for me, and, I've got a couple of testimonials that talk about this, that I don't actually care that you make money. I only care that you make money if you're doing something that feels authentic and congruently you. If you can't feel authentic and you can't feel congruent, it doesn't work. And a lot of bulldog sales techniques make you feel like a slimy used car salesperson. And that is the last thing you want to feel like. So but what happens is when people don't feel comfortable being a salesperson, they tend to avoid the sales approach. And I think Peter Thiel talks about it best in book 0 to 1. He's like, if you look around your office and you don't see any salespeople, if your business just consists of just you and your laptop, and you don't see any salespeople around, you're the salesperson. And yet most people go out into business for themselves. They spend 5 to 10 years learning their functional skill, maybe another 5 or 10 years perfecting it. Then they go out into business for themselves, and they spend all this money starting their business and putting up their website and doing all of these things, but they never learn sales. And the reason why they never learn sales is because they've been told you have to have the gift of the gab to sell. So they hope that their experience and their network will provide them the money that they need. Now, here's the key thing. Everybody goes and learns how to do their books so that they can do their tax return. Everybody learns how to do other elements within the business, and they all weren't naturally gifted at their functional skill, or a lot of them weren't, when they started and they went to university or trade school to do it. But we all know that those are learnable skills. Sales seems to be that one skill that everyone's like, oh, you've either got it or you don't, like networking and like public speaking. All of those skills, and I've got a podcast called The Introverts Edge, and where I've interviewed top podcasters like, Jamie Masters, and interviewed her on her introversion because everyone thinks she's extroverted. So did I. And, she's like, no, I just use the system. Interviewed top networkers like the founder of BNI, which is the largest networking group in the world. He's like, no, I just use the system. It's my process. That's why I created BNI, to create a systematic process. And sales is exactly the same. It's a process. But people think that it's a natural, so they'll go out and they'll do it off the cuff. And when it doesn't work, then they'll be like, oh, no, I'm just not naturally gifted at sales. Well, I don't know about you, but if I was trying to be an engineer and I tried to design a house the first time without 5 years' worth of college education, I'd probably suck at that too.
Yeah. Well, and so, with all the work that you've done, what are some of, and just, I know we're you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what are some of the main differences between introverts and extroverts?
Yeah, definitely. And there's been studies since the dawn of time talking about the difference between introverts and extroverts. And for a lot of people out there, they're like, oh, am I an introvert or am I an extrovert? And there's this new term that, people talk about that you kind of a hybrid of both. And here's the thing. I think if you break it down and you ask yourself the question, where do I recharge my batteries? That is the only real way to define the difference in the way I see things. See, I've got a great friend, Jim Cathcart. He's the number one most award-winning speaker in the world. And he recently came down and spoke on my stage. I've got a conference that I run every year called Small Business Festival. And, this year we were able to run over 5,000 events. Events in 4 cities for 5,000 attendees completely for free through sponsorship funding. We were listed by Inc. as the number 3 festival in America for small business. And I got him to speak on our premium stage in Austin. And here's the difference. He and I both spoke from that stage. Now, at the end of that event, he wanted to go out on Rady Street, which is the little bar scene in Austin that everybody talks about. And he wanted to go and he wanted to party because, he wanted to play his guitar and he'd have a wonderful time, but speaking charged him up. And he then wanted to go and discharge some of that energy out on the town. Me, on the other hand, I was exhausted by the end of it. I wanted to go into a dark room, put on the TV with just me or maybe just me and my fiance and completely switch off. That's the difference. For me, as an introvert, I want to recharge alone. He, as an extrovert, wants to recharge around people. And he finds people as for him, the catalyst for him wanting to do more things with people. For me, I just want to be by myself. So I will do sales, but I want to follow a systematic process because the things that I say don't naturally come to mind unless I've planned them beforehand. People listening now will be like, yeah, this guy's just, able to talk off the cuff. No, I'm not. This is all stuff that I've practiced and all things that I've done on interviews beforehand. And if not, I would have practiced it if it was new material well before this interview. Now, it does sound like a lot of work, but when you think about how much work goes into writing proposals and chasing up clients and going to networking events, all for people not to buy, or the time I'd spend on this interview to get nobody even care what I had to say because I didn't do it well. Failure takes a lot more time than just doing a little bit of practice to ensure your success.
That's such a big deal. I mean, it's these steps that you take to move forward as opposed to doing nothing.
Well, that's exactly it. And, people say, yeah, but, I don't want to sound scripted, and it also sounds like a lot of work. Well, let's cover the lot of work thing first. People these days perform Shakespeare off Broadway probably for minimum wage. And, Shakespeare's not even real English anymore, right? That's not common words we use every day, but they can do it. Pages and pages of content easily because they remembered it. The second one is they don't want to sound robotic. Well, if you've ever watched TV and you've watched one of your favorite actors in your favorite movie perform, they don't sound scripted either. But the telemarketer that calls you at 8 o'clock at night does. Here's the difference. The telemarketer is reading off a script and they're probably brand new or they haven't really spent the time learning the script. A person that you're watching on the movie has learned the script, practiced the script, embraced the script, made it their own, and then they perform it just like they are that person. They've completely embodied it. Now, the one thing that's key about my process is I don't teach you how to become someone else. This system is something that I teach you. It's a step-by-step process, but it's all about introducing your own stories, the elements that are key about yourself, and then utilizing those. If you work for a bigger company, it's about finding the core stories within the corporation and then utilizing it so everybody knows them. But it doesn't take anywhere near as long to learn as Shakespeare. And, you might have spent 5 years getting your degree at university. This took me 6 weeks to master while I was learning on YouTube. But by reading the book and learning the system of the sale, you'll actually be able to download this and, it completely get the steps right learn the steps, learn the elements of the stories that you need to tell and the questions you need to ask, completely embody it, it'll take weeks, not months, not years, and your income will benefit for the rest of your life because you learn the process.
I think it's just astounding that your road has brought you here, and it couldn't happen to a better person, because here you are being able to help people who, have viewed introverts as probably not typically the best salespeople or the best employees, when it's so far from the case, like we talked about initially with our conversation. But how you can also use these techniques to develop huge success.
Well, the thing is that both introverts and extroverts have their advantages and their disadvantages. For instance, introverts perhaps aren't quick to come up with something, but they're great listeners. So if they learn the sales script, but they also know how to listen to the answer, which introverts have a huge advantage on, then they become more empathetic to the client, and as a result, they build greater rapport with the client. Now, there's some great steps inside the book about how to tell stories to build rapport, because stories are statistically proven this is a study out of Princeton, that talk about when you tell somebody a story, you create this natural resonance between you and the listener, right? So you're basically developing rapport without having to have one of those cool personalities that everybody naturally loves. On top of that, it's proven that when you tell a story, people remember 22 times more information embedded in the story than just, told off the cuff. So once introverts harness the power of storytelling, when the story is finished or when they ask a question, they know how to listen. On the flip side, extroverts are really great at coming in and developing a relationship and becoming the best liked person in the room, but they never listen to people as much. And they have to spend a huge amount of time on active listening. If you look at a lot of salespeople out there, if you teach an introvert how to sell and their sales even just match that of an extrovert, an introvert will have generally a less cancellation rate because they're more diligent with their paperwork, they're more diligent with the follow-up. And because they've listened to the customer a lot more, generally what they supply to the customer is aligned with what their expectations were, not a little bit outside the scope of what they were there, but kind of good enough, but there's some customer service work required.
Well, when you're going along your journey and doing the research for your book, and it's pretty much like your life has been the research for the book, was there anything that came up that was really surprising to you?
I think it was how many industries it worked for. See, I'd worked in, my background was, I started in selling telecommunications. And then I moved from, I'd been responsible for 5 multi-million-dollar success stories before I turned 30. But, my last one was nationally accredited education. You would have assumed that perhaps the sales process may have been different. Now, of course, the elements inside the steps of the sale were different, but the same process worked. Now, I've applied this strategy to over 3,500 businesses, and it works every time. It's almost foolproof because it's a step-by-step system. I think the thing that shocked me is the fact that most people, when their business is failing because their sales are limited, they keep saying, I need to meet more customers, but if their closure rate sucks, you don't need more customers, you need to improve your sales process. And then you want to increase the number of leads. So people spend fortunes on PR and social media and advertising to get the phone to ring more. But if they don't improve their closure rate, then you're now losing exponentially more customers. But what shocked me was the fact that people were willing to accept it as, we're just not natural at that, so we're going to do our best. When I guess it was lucky. My back was against the wall. I had no option because what I was selling. I didn't have a functional skill to fall back on. All I was selling. So I actually had to learn the process of selling. And I think by having my back up against the wall, I had no option but to find an answer. And I think a lot of successful people on this earth and a lot of people that have created systems that have changed exponential number of people's lives, it all started because their back was against the wall and they didn't have an option but to find a way through it. So for me, I went to YouTube, and even though it was all these extroverted people teaching me how to sell, what I did is I became a student of the art. And, it didn't take me years. It took me 6 weeks to go from having no business in sales to being the number one salesperson in the largest sales and marketing company in the Southern Hemisphere. But for people that are in business in any form, and, sales is a great example of that, but I think that people when they're hit by something that they don't know how to do in any stage of their life outside when they're in their education years, i.e. primary school, high school, and college or university, if they don't know how to do something, a lot of times they'll just respond with, it's not something that I know how to do, so I can't do that. And that is not where we should be in our lives. I mean, for me, I'm almost ashamed to say it now, but, while I built all these successful businesses before I turned 30, they were all telemarketing, direct sales, and retail stores. I didn't know how to change a website. Like, I had 3-page websites, and if I needed something changed, I'd go to a developer, and I would tell them, look, can you make this change? And after 3 emails, I'd end up driving to their office to say, please make the change now. I didn't know what I was doing. In 2014, I made the decision that I was going to create an online business. And, it took me 9 months to go from not even knowing how to change the word "that" to the word "they" on a website to being an award-winning blogger, an internationally award-winning blogger, and listed by Evan Carmichael as one of the most retweeted business coaches on Twitter. But it didn't come from me hiring out. I would have spent a fortune worth of money hiring people because I wouldn't have even known how to tell the difference between people that know what they're talking about and people that were lying to me. So instead, I became a student for 2 months. I put in place my own strategies, my own systems, and by October of 2014, I automated it and didn't do any more work on my website for nearly 3 years, went and wrote the book, created the academy, relaunched my website only just recently, all because I decided that not knowing how to do something was no excuse for me not to have mastered it.
Yeah, I think for many people who become entrepreneurs, that's such a big deal because they should learn how to manage different aspects of the business so that they're able to know it doesn't take 10 hours to do postings, or uploading something. It only takes about this much time, and so they can manage appropriately.
Well, one of the funny things is, one of the things I'm known for now is, as you said, I'm known as the rapid growth guy. And, I've created an academy for people to learn all the steps of rapid growth. Because what I found when I was learning was I was really frustrated with a few things. The first one was generally people will help you with networking, branding, sales, or online Facebook ads, webinars, all those sorts of things. But there was you'd have to try and figure out how to piece it all together. And each person tended to teach you one element. So generally, a lot of the systems conflicted. And you ended up overwhelmed trying to figure out how it all went together. So what I did, because one of the biggest things and one of the biggest shifts for me was that I learned the fact that you have to differentiate yourself in your brand too. So learning how to sell gets your head above water. But one of the most important things is making sure that you don't say you're a business coach or you're a branding expert or you're a life coach or you're, a systems engineer. Because as soon as you say that, people put you in a category and then it's even harder to sell. So what I did is I pieced together a system that took people from the foundational, what business do I want to be in, how do I create the message, right through to going out and validating in the real world and then taking it out for online sales. I can't say how frustrating it is for me to see a lot of people start a business and build it online and they never even validated it with real people because they're scared of selling. So they spend 5 years on their website and then say it didn't work. Well, 2 networking events would have taught them why it wasn't going to work. They could have fixed it and then created a really successful online business.
Mm-hmm. And move things from there. I can so easily see, Matthew, where your book is relatable to introverts much more than the sales aspect. For people that are looking to be able to, maybe be better speakers or, maybe they want to be able to reach out a little bit more to people in their community. It's just, to me, it seems more than just a book that is helpful with sales.
Well, the book actually started because I have a keynote presentation called Rapid Growth the Lazy Way, where I talk about the 3 steps towards rapid growth, which is create a unified message that excites and inspires people to want to know more, discover a niche of willing to buy clients, and then create a sales system that works, both offline and online. And I talk about the fact that I was an introvert that learned how to sell. And people kept saying to me, there's so many books teaching extroverts. There needs to be one that teaches introverts. And I kept then starting to say, there needs to be a book. And no one wrote it. So I was like, that's it. I'm going to write this book. But first book, because eventually I had to do something, right? So I wrote the book. But the truth is that there are stories inside the book about people that were struggling to get a promotion inside their own business. Inside a massive multinational corporation, and how they used the techniques to get themselves a promotion, or how other people manage to get investment funding through using these techniques as well. So there's lots of stories outside the scope of just sales. But the thing is that I wanted to start somewhere, and I wanted to make it specific around one thing. And, the reason why I created the Introverts Edge podcast was because, for me, the goal of this book was to fix a major problem that I saw out there in the world. However, I wanted to create a greater dialogue. I wanted to remove the stigma that just because you're an introvert, you can't be successful in business, in networking, in sales, in life. I mean, a lot of people would say extroverts make better parents, and I don't think that's true either. But I think introverts think about the process of how they parent more and may end up better parents. They might just have to learn the system behind it. So the goal for me was to create a podcast that created a greater conversation outside the scope of sales. And that's why, I've had everyone from, one of the authors of The One Thing right through to, as we were talking about before, the founder of, UGG Boots and the founder of B&I to the founder of Digital Marketer, all talking about how, most people think they're extroverts, but they're actually introverted people, and they've just learned systems and processes to outgun their extroverted counterparts, hands down, to the point where people will then say, you guys are definitely extrovert. I can never be like you. And some of them are like, well, maybe I'm an ambivert. But the ambivert word for me is I am an introvert that's learned a system, so now I don't loathe going into extroverted, and using extroverted skill sets in extroverted forums.
Yeah, you're not so drained. I can see why people just have you out at their companies to talk about these topics. You're very knowledgeable about all of this and highly entertaining, and it really is information that sticks. And so, thank you so much just for spending the time with us today and sharing your wisdom and insights. Where can our listeners learn more about you and connect with your community?
Definitely. Well, obviously, the best place to start if you're an introvert is going to the introvertsedge.com. Obviously, most of the things that I do are under MatthewPollard.com, but the book and the podcast has its own website called the introvertsedge.com. And what you'll find there is you'll find the podcast. And for the people that, whether you're your own business and you need to learn the process of selling, or you're an introvert working in that corporate job because salespeople make phenomenal money and you hoped that you could earn that sort of money, the first chapter, because we didn't talk about the steps of the sale, and for me it's all about getting people educated. You can actually go to the introvertsedge.com and download the first chapter of the book, which goes into detail in what each one of the steps is. And as I said, even if you don't buy the book, if you read that chapter, you'll understand the sequence of a sale. And if you understand the sequence of a sale, then you can look at whether or not you're missing a step or whether or not your steps are most likely out of order. And that will make a phenomenal difference in your sales process.
That's fabulous. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
No, I've been very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, we are going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit JudyGoodman.com. That's JudyGoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Do you know that you can become a genius at any age? Do you know that you can change your life and create a brilliant life for yourself? Hi, I am Olympia LaPointe, an award-winning rocket scientist who you more than likely have seen on TED Talks, Impact Theory, and PBS. Check out my latest book, Answers Unleashed, The Science of Unleashing Your Brain's Power. Simply go to answersunleashed.com books and check it out for yourself. You'll find the tools to help you create the life you've always wanted.
The highly acclaimed and newly released book, The Hand Part 2 by Lynn Van Praagh Grattan, describes the journey between a psychic medium and a family who lost a son. Messages from Beyond Eternity's Gate is of love and healing. For more information, visit www.lynnvanpraagh-grattan.com. That's www.lynnvanpraagh-grattan.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. I am so delighted to be introducing our next guest, Jacquelyn Lynn, and she's here today to talk to us about her new book, Finding Joy in the Morning. Now, Jacquelyn is an inspirational author, business writer, and ghostwriter whose credits include more than 30 traditional books and over 3,000 magazine articles, ebooks, blogs, white papers, and more. She is the author of Words to Work By, 31 Devotions for the Workplace based on the Book of Proverbs, and Finding Joy in the Morning. You can make it through the night. So let's welcome to the show, Jacquelyn.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, it is such a pleasure to have you here. And gosh, what an inspirational book.
Thank you.
So I have to ask, what was your main reason for developing this book?
This book has, I think, a real interesting history. In my previous professional life, I did a lot of ghostwriting, and I had a client who came to me and wanted to write his autobiography because he had gone through a lot of really challenging challenges, to be repetitive. Mm-hmm. He'd had an awful lot of trials and tribulations in his life, and I tried to guide him in writing his book for him, into focusing on not just telling all of his icky stories, but also trying to communicate how he overcame them and how he managed to still be positive and think life was good and worth living. And interestingly enough, he had a hard time even understanding himself how he did that. And then he began experiencing some more difficulties and the project fell apart. But in the process of doing it, I started thinking about intentionally, how do people who face incredible challenges and, terrible things happen to them, and yet they are positive and they know life is good and they still look forward to waking up every morning. And how do they do that? So I started doing some research, and I started thinking about, how I'd come through some of my own issues, and decided to not let what I had learned in the process of this one project that didn't happen, to not let that go to waste.
Yeah, and it's so inspirational to hear how different people approach this, because it's just like it's not one shoe fits, all people. It could be what works for one person may not work for somebody else, and so it's so important to have these stories.
That's right. And, for somebody, you can say, they'll take the, hey, suck it up message and say, okay, I'll do that. And then other people, you can give them that, come on, chin up, look on the bright side, and they're going to smack you. So
mm-hmm. That's so true.
Yeah.
Well, and so when you were developing this, was there something that really stuck out for you? As kind of, gosh, I didn't know that, or that's new?
Not any one single thing. It was because the book actually focuses on 8 strategies for how to live a joyful life. and how to overcome issues and, just how to deal with whatever life hands us, whether it's, a traffic jam or a cancer diagnosis. And they all kind of work together. And I think that's probably an important message to get across is that, it isn't just one single thing of, you can't just chant positive affirmations and, and have life be good. I think one of the key strategies that I think is very important and effective is living in the moment, because so often we can get focused on regretting the past, worrying about the future, that we don't deal with the here and now. And so, a good example of this is, say, professional athletes. When they play a game, they're living in the moment. They've trained. They've done their stuff in the past. They've looked at the games they lost and all of that. But they don't look for the win until it's theirs. They really, really live in the moment. So I think, but I think if that's all you do, you're just going to have a hard time making it all work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, because, there's got to be more to it than that, and that kind of leads me to my next question, because in your book you talk about know who you are. And why don't you expand upon that for our listeners a little bit?
Well, and first I want to say that I come at this from a Christian perspective, because I am a Christian, but this isn't a book about religion. And I wanted, I want to make that clear too. And I have had, people who have read the book say to me, I didn't feel I was getting preached at. And, anybody, a believer, a non-believer, anybody of any faith can read this and get something out of it. But the know who you are part is know you are a child of God. And if you don't happen to believe in God, you are a child of the universe. You belong here. You have a heritage that is yours, and you need to know that and understand it and own it and seize it, and be confident in who you are. You're somebody special. You're here for a purpose, and you may not always be clear on what it is, and that purpose may, it may surprise you, but know that. So know who you are, and when you know who you are, it makes doing all the other things to bring joy into your world and others, it makes it a little easier.
Well, and, I'd have to agree with you. In reading your book, it didn't feel, it does come from a Christian perspective, but it's relatable to anybody on any level. So it wasn't really, that what your friend said about feeling like they weren't being preached at is a really good way of putting it, because it really is just timeless insight regardless, where people fall on the scale as far as their religion or their spiritual belief.
Yeah, and again, that's what I tried to do, because I came to Christianity kind of in midlife, and even today, I don't like being preached at. I sit restless in church on Sunday because I don't like being preached at.
I don't think most people do.
Yeah, so I didn't want to do what, to other people, what I don't want done to me. And, gee, haven't we heard that before?
Well, and it's people really, when they're looking for advice, especially, when we get to the point where finding joy in the morning might be something that's really difficult. We're going through hard times. We're going through a divorce or a death or a life change, loss of a job, or maybe someone's filing bankruptcy or whatever the case may be. That, when we're going through those difficult times, being able to, have inspiration like your book and pick it up and go, okay, today I'm just going to make it through today, helps people to be able to at least make shifts that they can look and say, okay, well, maybe it's, today's not going to be as bad as I thought.
Yeah. And the second part of the book is a list of mostly small things that you can do that most of them only take a few seconds or a few minutes, and they're things that you can do to bring joy into your life, and oftentimes by bringing joy into somebody else's life. Like, make a conscious effort that you're going to pay a compliment to a stranger today.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a big thing. A lot of times people have a really hard time reaching out. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you see their reaction, and it's gonna brighten your day when you brighten theirs, and one of the easiest ways I think to bring joy into your own life is to bring joy to other people, because it boomerangs right back at you. But I think that if you can, if you have this conscious period of saying, okay, I'm dealing with some issues, but for the next 2 minutes, I'm going to do something that is just designed to bring joy. Keeping a gratitude journal, just stopping and thinking about what you're grateful for. And that's, that's not groundbreaking. I didn't invent that. We've seen that over and over and over again. But one of the reasons people keep saying do this is because it works.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I've heard this said a long time ago, and it's always stuck with me. If the ocean's salvation, there are many rivers that lead to it. And so when we look at it that way, having a message in regards to, being able to have faith or whatever the case may be, it's different people will approach it in different ways, and different things will resonate with people.
Exactly.
So, and this kind of gets to the topic of faith, because we talk about that. So how does that work with all of this?
Well, I think having faith in something, and again, I recognize that obviously, Christianity is not the only faith group in the world, and I like to observe the difference between religion and faith, because there is a difference. Religion is the structure that you practice in, and it can be oppressive. Faith is what you believe in, and, faith can be as simple as you walk into a room and you hit the light switch, it's going to come on. That's having faith. And then, of course, faith goes so much deeper, and, faith in God, in your fellow human beings, in, the basic goodness of life and that sort of thing. And I think having, if you have that faith, that gives you the foundation to have joy in your life, and with the faith, you can make it through those difficult times, because when you lose the job, the friend stops speaking to you, your marriage falls apart. I mean, all of these things that we all deal with. There's a death, a tremendous tragedy, and we look at the natural disasters that fires and floods. And I live in Florida, and we just came through a pretty bad hurricane season, and you look at Texas and Puerto Rico. All of these things you can, when you have faith that, not necessarily that everything happens for a reason, because I'm not sure that's true. I think things just happen, but that it's all going to be all right in the end. That you're going to be able to pull the good things out of it. You're going to be stronger for it, and life is going to be better for it.
Well, I think that's so well put, because if we didn't have challenges in our life, then we would never know how strong it is that we are.
Exactly. It's that thing about the a tea bag. You don't know how strong it is until you put it in hot water.
Yeah, it's that.
Yeah. How do you appreciate the really good times if you haven't come through the struggles?
Mm-hmm.
We need those points of reference, those points of comparison. And another point about all of this is when you're in the middle of a storm, if you can just pause for a minute and think back to the other storms, the earlier storms, and remember how, you came through them and you were stronger than the storm. You've got a great track record of getting through things because that's what you've done all your life. So you're going to get through this one.
Yeah, and be able to make it through.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and so you talk about in your book, about living in the moment. So how does that play a part in all of this?
Well, it keeps you from drowning in guilt and regrets and in worry. As far as worry goes, a phrase that I heard years ago that I love is that worrying is just praying for the wrong thing to happen.
Oh yeah,
because
that's a good one.
what we think about, what we concentrate on, what we visualize, that we're going to manifest that.
Mm-hmm.
So stop worrying and think, if you think about what you want to happen and think about how you're going to make that happen. And another issue about worry is that if you really, again, look back on your history and think about all the things you worried about, most of the time, whatever happened really wasn't anywhere near as bad as what you thought it was going to be. You were worried because your kids stayed out late and, you pictured them in the hospital and really the movie ran late or whatever. So, put the future into perspective. Don't, plan, prepare, but don't worry. And then as far as the past goes, and I think this is probably, certainly equally, maybe even more important, because we really get wrapped up as human beings. It's so easy to get wrapped up in the regrets and the guilt and the why did I do that? Why did I say that? It was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. And things can be just so silly and petty, and chances are the other people involved don't even remember it, or it could be something really major. But again, it's in the past. If you have done everything you can do to make amends to people that you hurt, then you need to let it go. And I absolutely know how much easier it is to say that than to do it, and which is another issue of living in the moment, is to remember that forgiveness it kind of comes along with this, because you need to forgive and let go. But just letting go of the past, that's a daily exercise.
Yeah,
I know. Even having studied this and written about it, and I talk about it, and then I'll find myself, something will happen, and I will remember something stupid I did 20 years ago and cringe, and then think, wait a minute, don't go there. Nobody remembers that but you. Let it go.
Well, and so many people deal with that. I mean, yeah. I've done that. Everyone I know, I've got girlfriends that, they'll just say, like, they're friends of mine, they'll be like, well, I this one thing's really bothering me, and it happened like 25 years ago, and gosh, I wish I could make it right, or I wish I could have acted better, And it's interesting just how people get so caught up in that.
Yeah, and you can tell people to do all of the gimmicky things. Write it down, burn the piece of paper. And if that works for you, great, do it. But sometimes the only thing you can do is, when it pops into your head, kick it out. Don't share that valuable real estate of your mind with these things that are only going to drag you down.
That's such great advice. And so if someone's having this repetitive thought, what would be like a tool they can use to just try to move that out? Because is it just recognizing it that kind of helps that move?
I think a lot of it really is just recognizing that you need to let it go. Come up with something that you can consciously replace it with. Mm-hmm. A positive thing, and I mean, this is what I would recommend. It just,
not eating ice cream, right?
Yeah. But I mean, think, okay, okay, I'll relate this as a writer. Okay, so maybe I wrote an article for a magazine that the editor hated, and I'm just, cringing about that because I take such pride in my work, and I know then this editor never wanted to work with me again, but you know what? I've written best-selling books. Let's go there. Mm-hmm. Let's stay in what you've done that's good and positive, and then as quickly as you can, shift to the present. What are you going to do to create those good things right now? What are you going to do to play the game you're in instead of the game that was over 10, 15, 20 years ago?
That's such great advice and such just amazing inspiration. I mean, because I think that's one thing that a lot of people really have a difficult time with, and being able to have tools to use to be able to move beyond that, such a big deal. Yeah.
And again, I go back to that professional athlete example. And because most of us, I'm not a huge sports fan. In fact, I have been known to jokingly say, let's see football. That's the oval ball with the points on the end. But we all know how professional athletes operate, how they train, and how they focus, because if they couldn't focus on the moment, they couldn't play. So train and condition your mind the way professional athletes do. At the risk of going in a dangerous direction here, politicians are like that too. They're really good at, focusing on exactly where they are right now, and you listen to them doing interviews, and they don't answer the question about, did you cheat on your wife 2 years ago? They go right ahead with, well, I got this bill I want to get passed. It's teach yourself to do that kind of thing, and it can really, really help you let go of it. The other part of it is to also recognize you're not alone. We all have these times, and where we've just kind of stepped in the pile, and it's happened to all of us. And one of the things that I say to people who have to give presentations and they're not used to public speaking, and they're really nervous, I'll say, the one thing that you have to remember is everybody who's watching you, if you do make a mistake, the first thing that comes to their mind isn't, oh, you made a mistake. It's, I'm so glad that wasn't me.
Yeah.
So glad I didn't do that. So think about that. Everybody, even the people that you admire the most, they have all done these things, and they all have those monstrous little voices in the back of their head reminding them about the time they tripped up.
Well, it's funny. Most of the time what just makes a difference is that they don't say anything, because people don't know, sometimes people just don't know if they've messed up. They're just kind of like, okay, we'll just go right over that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they end up not knowing what you don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. And but even on on the deeper things, they don't go around saying, well, 20 years ago I had a relationship that failed because I did something terrible. They don't tell you that.
No. And you know what? And the thing is everyone goes and everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has a process of learning. And, it's, I don't know, in spirituality, I mean, we don't kill our wounded. We help people who have, that have made mistakes and are looking to, just make life better, and improve themselves.
Exactly. And if you think about the mistake, and if you think, well, what if somebody else did this? And if you would forgive them, then maybe you should forgive yourself.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah. Don't treat yourself with the same care and love and compassion and respect that you treat other people.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the hardest person to give respect to,
Exactly. Yeah.
Kind of like, we'll work on, treating everyone else with kindness, and we're at the bottom of that list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. We treat everyone else with kindness and beat up ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and so I know you also talk about, because your book is just such a joy, obviously, finding joy in the morning. But for those people that say we've worked on our spirituality and our faith, and we feel like we're in a good place, what are some little ways that they can, pick joy out when they, like first thing when they wake up?
Well, one of the things I do advise in the book is to keep a journal, and in fact, after I got the book done and I was going back and doing my editing, and I'm thinking, gosh, you kept over and over, you kept saying, write this down, write this down, write this down. I think I'll make a journal. So I created a companion journal to go with it, and that journal is it's not just blank pages, it's kind of guided, and it has on each page, it has, write down what did somebody else do for you today that brought you joy, and what did you do for other people, and what are you praying about today? So I think getting up in the morning and having this conscious thought of, okay, what am I grateful for? What am I going to do today that's going to make today fabulous? Another part of the journal is there's a section for regrets. And again, easier said than done, what I advise people do is write your regrets down and let them go. And maybe that exercise of writing them down will help you let them go. So don't go back and read the gratitude section. Don't go back and read the regrets section. Write that down, turn the page. If things are pretty good for you, be intentional about making them better. Yeah.
Yeah, because it always can be better. There's always a new level where it's like, hey, this can be we can have a better life here.
Just as a matter of fact, just this morning, one of my friends on Facebook posted about how fabulous 2017 had been for her, and how she was almost dreading the fact that this year was coming to an end because it had been so wonderful. And of course, my mind was spinning, and I kept reading. She says, and then I thought, if 2017 was this good, 2018 is going to be so much better. I said, okay, good. You got you're going in the right place.
That was a good save.
Yeah, but I think we have to remember that. You can say, oh, today was the happiest day of my life, but you know what? Tomorrow can be happier.
Well, and it's interesting because, we get to different levels of self-awareness, especially on our spiritual path, where it's really this really close connection to God.
Yes. And
it's beyond just the simple little joys or the things that temporarily make us happy.
And that's what gives us, I think, the foundation of knowing joy even when the worst things are happening.
Yeah, because it's and that's kind of just a beautiful thought, because it also brings in the faith piece that we're going to walk through this okay, and and that, really we're never alone.
And that is so true. And especially in the world we're in today with so much ugliness and evil that, we, shootings and crime and the opioid crisis. I mean, the world is, if you want to look at it from that perspective, the world's a pretty nasty place right now. Yeah. But it's not. It's not. If you have a good, sound, solid relationship with God, and, I go back again to this isn't religion. This is a relationship. Then you're safe. Whatever happens, you're going to be fine. You're going to come through it, and then when it's all over, you're going to go to a better place.
Well, and it allows us to help other people who are going through difficult times to see that, this isn't the end. There's more to life. There's the opportunity for happiness, because some people go through some pretty horrific things.
They do, and you've probably been through some. I know I've been through some, and fortunately, time gives us perspective, and they don't. The more time goes by, the less horrific they seem. But still, it's been there. We grow from it. We get stronger because of it, and then we're there to help other people who are coming along that path after us.
Yeah, we can be there as a beacon of light for them. Well,
and that's joyful.
That part is.
It really is, and yeah. when you look at it and you say, wow, when I was going through that, I thought, there was nothing redeemable about this, but it gave me what I needed to help this other person. That just made it all worthwhile.
Well, and I've heard also it's like you can't take somebody someplace you haven't been. So to sometimes walk people through areas of darkness, you have to be able to have kind of walk that path yourself, to have kind of just a basic understanding, so it provides you some empathy for them.
I think that's true.
Yeah. So, and I know, gosh, we've covered so many great things and talked about so many wonderful things. What final thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with?
I think perhaps the most important thing is to recognize that we are not in control. We need God or whatever superior power we believe in, because that's where the control is. But more important, we're not in this alone. We have God, and we have each other. And we need to take advantage of that, to remember to be part of a community, and within that community build joy.
Well, and Jacquelyn, so where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about not just this book, but the other books you've written?
My website is createteachinspire.com. And if you go on the website and browse around, you'll see links to my social media, Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. And of course, the books are all available on Amazon. And they're in some bookstores. If they're not in your bookstore, ask for them.
And they'll make it there.
Yeah. Please.
Well, yeah, for sure. A lot of independent bookstores love carrying books if they're not there, and you just have to ask. So, Jacquelyn.
They can order them.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to have great books like this in your neighborhood, because other people are probably interested in those as well. So. Yeah. Well, and so, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Marianne, it was absolutely delightful. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Well, thank you, Jacquelyn. It's been such a joy to spend this time with you, and so appreciate all of your insight, wisdom, and knowledge on finding joy in the morning. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.